Hello there, Seraph17 once again. This is my Evil Within Akumu difficulty video walkthrough. This is no upgrades, no keys, and we're on chapter 14, which is entitled Ulterior Motives. This is part 1 of 2, and we're moving into the subway down this faulty escalator. So, the machine I've just passed just then will dispense green goo. It'll also dispense bombs, I think, if you try and whore it too much. At this moment in time, I actually didn't realise that those machines gave you things, which is kind of awesome, because it just goes to show you can play a game a lot and still not understand all of the features of it. And right now, I've currently played probably more Evil Within than most people on the planet at this moment in time, because it's a really fun game. I got it early, and I've just been really deep in it. I've been playing around with the DLC features, so I have used the double-barreled shotgun, which is kind of strange because it seems to take different ammo from the normal shotgun, or maybe it's just me, but I didn't really have that many shots with it, and I didn't have the option to upgrade it, so it was just kind of a cool-looking gun that does what most shotguns do, and I was hoping for it to be a little bit more different than that. You know, all of the weapons on this game are in here for a reason. They all have their purposes and their place, and the differences between shotguns you'd think would be a noticeable thing, even if it's just the contrivances of the game, but it isn't. They seem very similar. I was kind of hoping for Gears of War 3, where if you use the Gnasher, you know, you get the much faster fire rate, you get the ability to do the one-shot sprays, but they are trickier to land because of the randomness of the gun. Whereas if you use the sawn-off, you get, you know, if you're close enough you'll decimate anything, but if you miss or it doesn't die, you then have a big reload, and I was hoping for maybe something like that. And when I think of shotguns, I always think of Turok Rage Wars, because that was kind of the culmination of a lot of features from previous Turok games, and there was a shotgun on that had a street sweeper function, which essentially fired every shell it had in the gun, which I always found quite fun. Right here there is a new enemy. I was experimenting to try and spawn him with the pistol shot so then I could stun him and stab him. As you've guessed, it's the invisible fellas from... Oh, he's there, you see it? Oh no, sorry, that was... that was the Ruvik clone that I got the attention of when I fired my other gun. He's a different enemy placement on this sequence, along with these traps here. On 2 of the escalators there are traps. There's an invisible dude here, there's a Ruvik clone, and then everything else is the same as previous difficulties. The dude is laid just in front of me. To the right of the blob is where the invisible guy lays, but for some reason he only spawns when you either get really close to him or you make noise close to him. So, did you see him? When he's on the floor, I don't think it gives you the prompt to burn him. I just think it's one of those things where 1 minute he's not there, the next minute he is. Because I've been doing a lot of experimenting on casual recently, where on chapter 5 at the beginning, where there's a ton of these dudes, on casual you have the option to have this awareness bar on, and I don't know if you can do that on Akumu, but it'd be helpful if you could, because it tells you when people can see you, and it's kind of obtrusive because it's part of the HUD. But it also tells you when there are enemies around. So when you see him appear on that first corridor and he vanishes, he technically leaves the game at that point. And then a couple seconds later, the eye appears and he appears. And it's this notion of, they didn't want you... Look at this guy! I had no idea where this dude was going, but it wasn't anything to do with me. The dude's a genius, I love him. I got so lucky then, because if he'd been trying to kill me instead of trying to run past that brick wall, I would have been dead, because he was all up in my shit really fast. But the AI on this game, folks, is what's going to give you the most room to play. It sometimes is very strange and doesn't work perhaps the way it should. You know, I've seen countless videos at this point of people getting different results to me in different sections because of just how the AI functions. And my double keeper fight is going to be a fantastic example of this, because I somehow managed to get the keepers to stand around a little bit, and I've done that fight a lot, guys. I've spent hours with those keepers without upgrades, and they don't often stand around that much, you know. They're generally always on your ass, and in my successful run that I'm going to be showing you, I have two issues with that fight. The first one is I get their AI to stop, which is very strange, and I'm not sure how I did it. And then the second one is I get them somehow to throw so many traps it looks like they're not throwing traps anymore. And it's all because they planted them all in the same place, and it's something I have never come across. But I'm going to explain that in Chapter 15, because this is Chapter 14, of course. So this is a pretty big room that can be stealthed. Every single one of these pieces of concrete in the water on Akumu has those invisible creatures that we were killing a moment ago. You can burn them, and if you stay down here, there's almost no reason for the Ruvik clone to see you. There are two guys across from us in the car with guns. One has a rifle, one has an assault rifle. Both of them have masks. The way I'm going to be playing this... Well, the way I played it on Survivor is I snuck past this entire room. But of course, on Akumu, because of the awareness difference, I couldn't do that. I just kept getting spotted at certain parts. So instead, I took a more combat approach to it. And I'm systematically burning these things. He's just seen me then, so I have to hit him. You'll notice I'm waiting for him to finish doing his scream because I don't want to waste the round. You might wonder why I did that. There's a chance for some reason he'll survive a magnum round when he's screaming. I'm not entirely sure how it works. But if you get close to these bodies, they will drop and they are alive. And because I fired guns, these guys are going to come and investigate. So, guy with the gun there is always going to rush you. Guy with the rifle is always going to stay back. I'm going to try and isolate and conquer the guy with the rifle and then the guy with the assault rifle. And whichever order I do it will depend on how the gameplay handles this. And I think... You see that then? That's one of the issues I have with the grenades. For some reason, Sebastian can throw grenades from a crouched position, but he decides to stand a lot. And when you stand like that on this difficulty, you will die sometimes. Oh, here he comes. That is the final of the invisible fellas. He's not dead though. You can tell with the ripples. As long as the ripples are still present, he's still alive. Rifle guy's still going as well. There he is. Burn him, Chris. Just in case. Technically, I think... Oh, God, he's close. So this is as close to a crazy gunfight as you're going to see me get into for most of this video. Because believe it or not, subtlety and discretion is your best weapon in this game. This is just one of those rooms where my strategy, which I thought was awesome, didn't work. So, because of my frustration with it, I decided to just come in here and Dirty Harry some people. And this is a surprisingly short level. I know it's 2 videos, and I know the videos are quite long, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that long at all. So, right then, does anybody want to defend the match mechanic again? Because I just don't think you can. Somebody mentioned that when they're getting up, you can't use the match, and I appreciate that, but how many times have you tried and they weren't getting up? It's just kind of not acceptable for a game where you die in one hit, and the loading screen is longer than the time it took you to die. It seems very strange to me how it can have such interesting detection. But now this is clear, there is no checkpoint yet. You have to traverse the next train cart to get your checkpoint, and then we're going to be moving into the sewer area so that we can come up against the Quell. And the Quell is a very interesting creature. It's a boss, so it has a lot of life. It has a handful of strategies that involve damaging you in kind of unfair ways. And I'm saying the word unfair not as a just straight up totalitarian mindset. This is how it is and this is how it always will be. If you don't agree, I'm going to execute you. But it has these slugs and it spawns them, and when it's spawning them, you can't hit the animal because it will not fall out of the vent. Which is okay, I guess, it's doing its attack, let's wait for its attack. And if you can stay on top of the spawn, it's perfectly fine. It's when you can't, and these slugs come for you, they do. The little racers, and sometimes if you use an intelligent burst of speed, you can get away from them and they'll kill themselves. Other times, you just drop down dead, and for the most, you can learn how to navigate them really well. But there are still moments where you'll take splash hits, and it kind of feels like you shouldn't have. And it does lead to that feeling of, they're a little bit cheap. And I don't mind them so much. I think the fight would be more interesting without them, but I understand them. They're just like the Heresy fight. They're just like those crazy worms that thing was shitting out. And they work in a very similar way, where sometimes you shoot them with the pistol and they don't die. Other times they explode and kill all of the friends, you know. So you'll notice, just like I did in that encounter, I'm going to use a shotgun on them. And every single part of my body screams, don't use the shotgun against them, Chris. But I have all this footage of me using the pistol and getting killed because of it. And I am a massive supporter of doing what works. Of course, it has to be within the game's rules. I'm not a big fan of cheating, and I'm not a big fan of having people do things for you. Even though if people were to request, you know, things of that nature from me for monetary gain, I would probably straight up do it. Because I was watching a stream the other day of Justin Wong, who is a professional Street Fighter player. He's a professional fighting game player. He's kind of like a child prodigy who's grown up on the scene, and he's incredibly good. He does private lessons, and I'd never really come across this notion of you know, helping people play games better, but it's a cool idea. And then when I listened to his prices, I'm like, motherfucker, what? This dude is, like, what did he say? It was like $50 for an hour. And I know dollars are kind of like Monopoly money and they don't really mean much, but that's still a lot of money. And for an hour, it's like a guitar lesson, it's like a driving lesson. Like, motherfucker, that's kind of crazy. But then you've got to think, haven't you, of his caliber of a player. He's a professional player, he's one of the best in the world, and you're using his time. So time is money, and how do you calibrate value on time? And I've always thought of weird things like that. Like, can you imagine if you somehow had got yourself into the fortunate position of being paid to get achievements for people, or trophies? Like, if you really like getting achievements and trophies, that would probably be your dream job. But how do you quantify that? Because each trophy and achievement takes a different amount of time to get. Some are easy, some are more difficult, some are skill intensive, some are time intensive. Like, how would you be paid for that in this imaginary world where we get paid to do the things we love? Like, would it be a set amount of money for the 1000G or the Platinum Trophy? Or would it be per trophy? Would it be hours played? Like, it's a very strange kind of situation to be in, but yeah, that dude gives lessons on helping people how to become better fighting game players and charges the fucking earth. It's kind of insane. And nobody seems to see a problem with it, so he obviously must impart some great knowledge and really help. And I think that's a really cool thing, that, you know, people can give back that kind of stuff. When I worked at a call center, I was friends with a guy who was a multilingual person. He spoke a handful of languages, and he used to do lessons over webcam and get some money that way via Skype, which I always thought was kind of cool. Funny thing about that dude is he wasn't very good at his job, because unfortunately when you're working in a call centre, you're essentially the mouthpiece for a company, so your opinions don't really matter. It's essentially, you have to do what the company deems best and always be thinking of the company. And this guy was a little bit too honest and a little bit too, you know, couldn't really peddle the bullshit the way they want you to. And when they mark your calls or when they listen back to them, if they hear you doing things like that, you're being counter company and you don't last very long. But now we've done that sequence, we're moving into the sewers. I know you don't want me to talk about call centres, because is there anything fucking duller? It has to be said, guys. Like, sure, it's interesting if you work in one because you know how the politics of it works, but I'm a person who, when I'm out with my friends and people start talking about work, I just don't understand it at all. Like, I understand it's a very large percentage of people's life, and a lot of the experiences that you can have there can be quite interesting and funny, but when they're just talking about work, and they don't do an interesting job, to me it's like, you spend 5 days a week, sometimes more, in this place you don't like, and now on the weekend when you're out away from said place doing something you do like, you're talking about it. I don't get that. Like, right now, in my position, I'm doing something I really enjoy and I'm getting paid to do it. And even I don't talk about that when I'm with my friends that much. I'll bring it up occasionally, but I'll not tell you about the production side of it, the stuff you don't see, because who gives a fuck, you know? It might not be interesting to them. And when you're at, it's one of those things where you've not seen somebody in a while, so you generally talk about things that you have this shared awareness of, a la interests and passions and things. So when somebody starts talking about a call centre to people who aren't in call centres, I always think, like, what is the fucking point of this conversation? Because it's like dreams, you know? Dreams are awesome when they're yours, and nobody gives a fuck about other people's dreams, because we're inherently selfish beings, and it's just how it works. And there will always be exclusions to the rule, but it's like other people's kids. Is there anything less interesting than someone else's children, unless you really like children? I don't think there is, and maybe I'm a sociopath, who knows, but when somebody's showing me a video of a child doing basic functions that keep it alive, I always wonder how anyone can be surprised by this, you know? Oh yes, it can breathe. You know, what a fantastic testament to the human species that it can do what every other motherfucker can do. Yes. And we're really bad at that age, guys. And we were all there at one point, we just don't remember it. You know, we literally have to be the cutest thing on the planet to our parents to stop them eating us. That's all it is. You know, we're completely helpless. And it's a very humble beginning for what we can turn into. Which unfortunately isn't a werewolf. But here are some alter egos. This move right here is an insta-kill on every single difficulty. I learnt that on my casual playthrough. It appears that almost every alter ego can do it, but some decide not to. I have no idea what dictates why they do it. Is it difficulty? Is it proximity? Is it persuasion? I couldn't tell you. What I can tell you is pretty much all the enemies in this area can be circumvented. You can use the traps, you can run past them, you can just intelligently kill one or two of them. Most of them can be completely skipped, a la no bullets used. I know this thanks to my speedrun that I did. The section coming up, which I don't know why I'm standing here, I think it's because I assumed that the lasers would stop happening, but that's not how this room works. You actually go under them, and I'd forgot that part. But on that tangent anyway, guys, I was speaking about the job thing and speaking about it. It's not just call centres, I was using that as an example because I've worked in one. You know, it's just one of those things that I don't personally understand when someone has a legitimately interesting job. I think listening to those stories are great, and when someone has a legitimately cool or funny story that's happened in a workplace, because we've all got them and we've all had them, then that's perfectly fine. It's just when you bring the banality of, you know, just the mundane day-to-day lives of quiet desperation to the forefront of times that aren't meant to be that way, I just don't understand it. And it reminds me of how everybody has this notion of, you know, what the perfect conversation is or what the perfect night out is. You know, it's not a night out unless I'm completely shit-faced. It's not a night out unless I've had a BJ off a stranger and caught syphilis. It's not a night out unless I've put away more units than could kill a small, you know, child. And we're all victims of our own appreciation, I guess, and our own assumptions. So this part here, you can skip them because they can't go into the vents. There you go. You'll notice there's an extra enemy there because it is on this difficulty. There's also going to be extra bear traps in some places, which is worth noting as well. A handful of moments on this level, the Quell's going to turn up. This is one of them. Do not waste your ammo. It's very easy to do so if you don't know it's scripted. But he's going to get taken by the creature. The Quell is apparently the manifestation of Ruvik's feelings of wanting to hide himself away from the world because his parents did so. And that's kind of what it is. But we're coming up to the end of the video. As long as you don't trip this next trap, you'll not set off the klaxon, and you'll not be in the systematic electrocution that seems to happen on this section. Is it this section or is it a later section? I can't remember. I think this is just a klaxon, sorry. Yeah, it is. But this is the end of the video, folks. Thank you very much for watching, and you take care now.